In this unit, we are going to start talking about trigonometry. So we'll study the 6 measures in right triangles and we'll learn how their sides and angles are related. The first lesson is going to be talking about tangents. Now we've talked about tangents as far as lines that hit circles, but today we're going to talk about how they relate to triangles. So the first thing that we want to do is review right triangles. If you remember, a right triangle has a 90-degree angle. The angle or the side directly across from it is called the hypotenuse. And then the other two sides are just called the legs. A trigonometric ratio is the ratio of the lengths of two sides of a right triangle. So remember, a ratio is an amount like one number on top of a number. So if you have similar triangles, the trigonometric ratio is going to be the same regardless of the actual size of the triangles. And we know that to be true because the ratio depends on the size of the angles and not on the lengths of the sides. So here are some terms for some trig ratios. When we're describing a trig ratio, you need to know these two things. Now, we already talked earlier about the hypotenuse. So that's going to be always the angle that's across from the 90-degree angle. Now, the other two things are going to be opposite side and adjacent side. Opposite side and adjacent side are always going to be the two legs. And it depends on what angle we're talking about that tells us which one is which. So if we're not going to talk about C. When we're talking about opposite and adjacent, we're talking about the two acute angles. So for this one, here's triangle ABC. C is the 90-degree angle, so A and B are both acute angles, right? They have to be less than 90 degrees. So if we're talking about angle A, then opposite is going to be the one that's directly across from it. So if you were to draw an arrow straight across, that's going to be the opposite angle. The opposite side. The adjacent side is going to be the side that's a leg that's right next to it. Okay, so don't get confused. The adjacent side is not the hypotenuse. It's the other leg that's not the opposite one. So here, if we're talking about angle A, this is opposite, and then B is adjacent. Now, if we're talking about angle B, then B is going to be opposite, right? It's the one that's right across from it. And then A is going to be the adjacent one. Again, don't get confused and use the hypotenuse. Now we're going to talk about the tangent ratio. Okay, and then we abbreviate it TAN. So you'll see that on your calculator. It'll be labeled TAN, and I'll show you that here in a second. When you have a right triangle, the ratio of the length of the leg opposite of any angle to the length of the leg adjacent to the angle is called the tangent ratio. So here, if we're referencing angle A, okay, then the tangent ratio is going to be opposite over adjacent. So the ratio is going to be A over B. So for example here, if we're saying what is the tangent ratio of angle A? Okay, so here we have angle A. Now remember, tangent is opposite over adjacent. And we'll talk a little bit about how we remember this later. So we have angle A, and so we have opposite, that's A. And then we have adjacent. Remember, not the hypotenuse. We don't talk about the hypotenuse. Adjacent is going to be B. Now for angle B though, okay, opposite, change the color. Opposite is going to be B, and then adjacent is going to be A. So if it's asking you, if it says what is the tangent ratio of angle whatever, then you just put the opposite over the adjacent. And depending on if it's a multiple choice or what the question's asking, you can leave it as a fraction, or you might need to reduce it to a decimal. So here we want to determine the tangent ratio of the specified angle. So on this one we have angle C here. Okay, so remember, tangent ratio is opposite, so we have the opposite here. That would be 6, and then we have the adjacent, which is 6 over 8. And then if you wanted to, depending, and again, it depends on what the question is asking. So it's important to know how to do all of this. If you want to reduce it down, right, then this would be 3 over 4 or 0.75. So depending on what the question is asking, all of these would be correct. These are all the tangent ratios. Here we want to determine the tangent ratio of angle F. Okay, so here we have angle F. Oh. All right, now what I would do, just so you don't get confused here, right? Look, here's the hypotenuse, right? Across from angle G, it's 13. Let's go ahead and X that out because we know we're not going to use 13. That way we don't even get confused as to which one we want to use. So we're going to take angle F and we're going to go across. So opposite is going to be 2, and then the angle adjacent to it is going to be 5. So we can either leave that as 2 over 5, depending on what the question is asking, or we can say that it's 0.4. Okay, so now here's where we get into finding the missing sides, right? So we know the tangent of an angle. So the tangent of an angle, so we'll just say whatever angle we have here, is equal to the opposite over the adjacent, okay? So for here, we're given the angle, right? We're given 30 degrees. So we know that the tangent of 30 degrees is going to be the opposite, okay? So here we have opposite, that would be 9. And then we have the adjacent, which is x, okay? So now what we want to do is we want to solve for x, okay? So what we would do is first we would take 9 is being divided by x, so we're going to multiply by x to get rid of that x on the bottom, right? So that's going to give us tangent 30 times x equals 9, and then we're going to divide by tangent 30. Okay, now here is we don't really know what the trig ratio for tangent 30 is. This is something that you either need a trig table or you need a scientific calculator to do this one, okay? So use your scientific calculator and I'll show you real quick how this works. Get your scientific calculator up, okay? The first thing that you want to make sure on your calculator is you want to go to mode, and you don't want to be in radians. You want to be in degrees. So you want to go over, so you go mode. Oh, sorry. So you go to mode, and then you go down to where it says degree, and you hit enter, okay? And then you can just hit clear to go back. Now, so what we have here is 9 over tangent 30, okay? So you're just going to put that in your calculator. We have 9 divided by, and if you look right here, here's your tangent button. See how it says TAN? So you have tangent, and then you're going to put 30 in there, okay? So we know that this side length, and for this one, we're just going to round it to the nearest tenth. So we're going to say that this side length is 15.6. So we know x equals 15.6. All right, so on this one, we want to find side Q. Again, okay, here's my angle. All right, so the tangent is always going to be an angle, right? We're going to say the tangent of 40 degrees, all right, is going to be equal to 10, because that's opposite, and then adjacent is going to be Q. All right, so again, you're going to multiply by Q on both sides, so that's going to give us tangent 40 times Q is going to be equal to 10, and then we're going to divide by tangent 40. So that's going to give us Q equals 10 over tangent 40. So again, we're going to come out here to the calculator. All right, always double check too. So here, right, go back to mode, see, make sure that it's still in degree mode so that we know we're, because your answer is going to be off if it's not in degree mode. So we're going to take 10, and then we're going to divide that by tangent 40. and then that's going to give us 11.91. So we're just going to say 11.9 is going to be our missing side length. And if you notice here, right, say it had asked us to find side length AC, okay? Well, we can't use that, we can't use it with the, what we could do first is find this side, right? Q, we could have found 11.9. And from here, all we have to do is use Pythagorean theorem to find this missing side, side AC. Okay, so again, we want to find side W. So we have 43 degrees, okay? So we have tangent 43, and it's going to equal opposite over adjacent, which is W. So again, we're going to multiply by W, so that gives us tangent 43 times W equals 14. Divide by tangent 43. And we know that W equals 14 over tangent 43. So again, we're just going to go back out to our calculator. Okay, go back to mode, make sure we're still in degree mode. We are. Okay, and now we're going to take 14. We're going to divide that by tangent. Okay, so this side is about 15. So we'll just say that it's 15. Okay, and then real quick, I want to show you if, let's say that we had, let's say that they had given us W, right, instead. So let's say we know this is 15 and we didn't know this side. Let's say that this side was W instead, okay? Now, if we look here, this would be tangent 43, right? And then the opposite would be W. So W would go on top and then 15 would go on bottom, right? So then what we would do here, since W is being divided by 15, all we have to do is multiply both sides by 15. So actually W for this one is going to equal tangent 43 times 15. And then, so that's all you would do to go put it in your calculator, is you would say tangent, and then the parentheses, this has to be 43 because you're saying the tangent of 43, and then you're going to multiply that times 15. And then see 13.98, which rounds up to 14, right? Because we knew that W was 14, so that makes sense if we were given the 15 instead. And that is the end of Tangents Lesson 1.